Mike McCool here with the Royal Examiner. In the studio with me today is Bill Hammack and Amber Morris. And today we're going to talk about their new organization that they're in the process of, basically formed, but really in the beginning stages, called the American Heritage. Is this ICYMI part of the actual name of the organization, or?
That is part of our legal name.
All right, so it's the American Heritage ICYMI. I said, what does that stand for? Tell us, Amber.
ICYMI is something that is very popular amongst the millennial age group right now.
And we're not in that, by the way.
Something that you would see text, and it stands for "in case you missed it."
Right. I've seen it used many times on,
It's becoming increasingly popular on news sources.
Right. It's funny, I have to go and I have to Google the slang to figure out what that means. They have a whole urban dictionary of, everything like that.
Urban Dictionary is my go-to.
Yeah. So anyway, tell us a little bit. Now, you're the founder and the president of the organization. Bill is your advisor. So tell us a little bit about what the organization is doing and what's the goal.
Sure. We founded American Heritage in September of 2018. I met Bill through politics, and I had been involved for several years, and I tend to usually be one of the youngest ones involved. And after volunteering at a primary last spring, I would tell people, don't forget to come out and vote today. And they would all say, vote for what? And I would say, it's a primary. And they would say, well, what's that? So Bill and I were discussing it, and I was saying how I was ashamed that my generation isn't involved in our government, locally, state, federal. So we decided we might start a PAC, which is a political action committee. And we started tossing ideas around, trying to get a feel for it, but we really were passionate in our decision to stay nonpartisan. It's easy in this day and age to offend people in politics. So we decided to make a nonprofit organization that is to outreach, engage, and ultimately educate millennials in the 18 to 35 age range. So we formed the nonprofit organization instead of a political action committee and chose to be nonpartisan, non-biased, and factual.
All right. So what's the goal?
Our goal, we have broken our mission down into 4 steps. So phase 1, we're going to engage our target audience, which is the millennials, and we're going to do that through social media. That's right now the biggest way to reach people. We want to use reenactors and historians to deliver the messages that we want to spread. And phase 4 relies heavily on the other 3 for its success, and we'll present the history of voting to include the women's suffrage, the Voting Rights Act, the constitutional amendments, and the current voting laws and procedures.
It's interesting because you're right. It is a area that is, I catch it all the time at the polls, and people say, well, who are you voting for? Or who should I vote for? And it's like totally a lack of, they're out there voting, but I'm talking about all ages, young and old. It's like they don't make that decision to vote until they're literally at the polls.
Yeah.
And which is really a shame about that. So hopefully things like this will get people involved into the voting aspects of our government. I mean, we really need to have people involved. You were on the electoral board, and the small percentage of the population that really votes. We are really truly governed by the few.
I mean, Amber was painstaking in her efforts to identify who is not voting, and we went through a lot of research and looked at polls, and we looked at voter registration. We found that millennials do all the registering, but they don't do the voting. So that's why we are targeting the millennial.
And you're going to let the rest of us float along with them? Is that what you're going to do? Share that information with the rest of the world? I mean,
well, it was so our support thus far, since we created our nonprofit in September, hasn't been the millennial generation. Of course, it's the older generations that are excited to get the millennials involved.
Right.
So I realized from a very young age in public schools that I'm facing a patriotic crisis in this day and age. And I identified that the reason that millennials register to vote in record numbers after we went page by page through the Virginia electoral paperwork that's
Right.
accessible online. When you go to DMV or you go to social services or you apply for any type of government-backed program, they ask you to register to vote. So if you go in DMV for any reason, for your 18th birthday to get your license changed or whatever, they said you want to register to vote. And myself included will say, yeah, sure, why not? You sign the paper, register to vote, and you never check the mail, you never get your card, you never ask where you vote. So they register to vote, but they're not doing their duty.
Right. Right. So what's the first thing you planned on doing to get the word out?
Our website is being developed. Should be, we're hoping, we have it on here on our rack card, but I think in the next 2 weeks we'll be up with a good website,
Okay.
which will give people information about our objectives. Our first active thing I think we're going to do is going to be follow the Constitutional Convention of 1787
Right.
day by day and publish that in our website. It's part of the education. The other thing we want to do is engage the people like Lord Fairfax Community College and go in and maybe have a pizza day and bring them in, and we'll have maybe reenactors or professors. But we don't want it to be a professorial environment. We want it to be an interactive environment.
Sure.
To stimulate the less attentive millennials.
You bring up those reenactors. It's amazing. We know Larry Johnson does his
Right.
Abel Johnson character,
Right.
and he's done that for several years. And there's others, and you don't realize how large of a group of people that are into this reenactment and sharing history, because it's very interesting when Larry does his presentation, how he incorporates the historical aspects of the life of those people and how it affect where we are today. And it does bring it. It's amazing. Just wearing the costume is amazing how that will generate interest.
The Sons of the American Revolution, which is headquartered in Winchester, and I have some association with, is very active. They do a 17 September every year at the Mount Hebron Cemetery in Winchester. Very impressive. The mayor of Middletown is a young
Right. Oh,
George Washington.
he's active in the reenactment. I notice he's in the Virginia Regiment.
And he's a millennial.
Yes, and he is a millennial.
I'm tied to the Daughters of the American Revolution through 7 different parts of my family. So we have a lot of ties in the American
It's very
Revolution.
interesting because you're right. I can remember in high school, which was a long time ago, and we were required then. I went to high school in Arizona. You had to study Arizona Constitution, and you had to study the U.S. Constitution. And I really don't think those things are taught anymore
They don't.
in school. And history, U.S. history, they've erased Vietnam from American history. And so it's history's being rewritten. And you've obviously read over all these articles over the years how history becomes shortened in time, and the mistakes and the progress that we had in history gets erased. And I don't think people understand it. You're seeing that now in the political realm of our government looking at socialism type of activities and things and not realizing the benefits that made this country so great was not based on socialism.
Right.
And so that's part of our American heritage and our history that needs to be taught to people. It's real easy to think about a free college education. Sounds like the way to go, but there's a lot of our history, and I'm sure that you'll cover things like that in your...
Well, Amber mentioned patriotic crisis, and it really is a crisis.
It's not fake. It's not fake. It's not made up, is
It's
it?
scary
No, that's not
for
fake
me
news.
to think long term.
Yeah.
And as a full-time college student myself still, I would love free college. But realistically speaking, that's not what this country is founded on. And also, as a millennial and as a college student, people tend to appreciate what they have to earn.
Exactly.
And so when you turn socialist, the people that flee socialist countries to come here, why would they want to go back
That's
to
right,
socialism?
right.
But speaking of learning that, where you were from, one of the statistics that we have on our Iraq card is the Center for American Progress in February of 2018 noted that in 2017, the National Education Association reported that only 25% of U.S. students read the proficient standard on the NEAP civics assessment. So I don't believe that my generation knows what their civic duties are.
Right. You remember watching those Jesse Walters or Jay Leno doing his streetwalkers thing, and they're showing pictures of the presidents,
Right.
recent presidents, George Bush, Barack Obama, and they didn't know who these, and they definitely didn't know who the vice presidents were,
Right.
and they didn't know who the president of the United States, or they didn't even understand any progression or
But
any
the policies
are
yeah.
basic things, and it just shocks you. And these aren't just kids; these are adults.
There's only one state that the majority of the people could pass a civics test, and that was Vermont. And our founding states, Virginia being one.
Right, right. Mother of the nation. I mean,
Right.
Yeah, I don't think people also locally, when we first got involved, our idea was to be local.
right.
And then we had an outpouring of support. We attended some symposiums at colleges and things like that. And we said, well, we'll go regional. So we included about 6 surrounding counties.
Right.
And then somebody approached me and said, can I introduce you to somebody in the Virginia State Education Program? And we talk about going statewide. So we haven't done any of that growth yet. We need to build our board
Sure.
first. But
But you have a franchisable opportunity here
Right.
to take this thing really state to state.
and here we are locally. We have such a unique opportunity because like you were talking about the reenactments. As someone who tends to get a little bit lazy myself sometimes, I would rather go watch a reenactment and have a hands-on engaged approach than to read about it in a history book. And to be able to associate it with that memory, it tends to, you tend to remember it.
So
more.
we want to make the thing history come alive.
Well,
I've heard that somewhere.
The
That does sound
the
familiar.
reenactment, watching that stimulates people to go back to the book and to do more research. It should raise curiosity to
I think it
level that
does.
we can, people are so busy now.
Right.
And to go do more work or to do more research, it's much easier if we can offer them something that is entertaining and educating.
Right. I think we need to bring it to top of mind awareness of our history, our founding principles that our whole society is built on. It sounds like it's what you're really
Right,
looking back
exactly.
to the foundation of where things are and why we do what we do today. I mean, and we know things need that. I mean, I think
Absolutely.
we're struggling.
Well, we want to start by focusing on the 2 founding documents, the Declaration of Independence and the Constitution. And that's good.
Well, that's kind of like the first steps.
Right.
baby
exactly.
steps.
They're the
first.
first steps, but they were the big. That's what our country was
Sure.
founded on, and I feel like in today's society that's often forgotten because to avoid offending people or stepping on toes, we kind of only remember the parts of history and the parts of the Constitution that.
I think all we remember are we the people, and they forget everything else.
That's because it's written in capital big letters.
Well, if you think about offending people, our founding fathers definitely offended people.
Absolutely.
And they got in their face. So I think that we need to realize that people are going to react to that. I mean, sometimes you have to
It's a good
get
way to
people's
see
attention.
our transition and our growth as well, though. If you look back at the things that us or our founding fathers did, and you think of a way that you can do it a little bit less offensive.
Sure.
Now, I mean, it's good to see the things that we've went through, like the women's suffrage and the civil rights and things like that. It's good to see how far we've come as a nation, and it's important to watch from start to finish or read. That way, you don't go back.
Right. And there's a lot of history that's really been forgotten of
Absolutely.
stages in our growth. I was watching a program yesterday or the day before on black congressmen and senators that came right after the restoration or the reformation that happened when they got right after the Civil War. Well, then that kind of phased out. I mean, we had a black senator, we had multiple black congressmen from the South even, and not just one or two. There was 20, I think. So quite a few, considering it just happened, and yet. Then it went through a phase where, that all phased out and think, oh, that was a mistake. And then now, people think now we didn't have a black congressman until 1990 or something.
Right.
And really we had him in 1800s,
Right.
So it's really part of history that I think we need to look at. And like say, it's forgotten. And there's a lot of things that happened during the war and our segregation and all those kind of things that make us the culture that we have today, that we need to really look back at the roots of these things. Yeah, and I think people forget.
So you've just educated people on
There you go.
piece of history.
Well, it is, and I think that that's going to be important
Yeah.
to what you're doing. So that brings us out to what's the next step? What are you planning on doing next?
Well, as I mentioned earlier, when our website is up, we will follow the 1787 Constitutional Convention. We will have to fill our board, and we're looking for primarily millennials who are energized and will work towards our goals. We're looking for Rockingham County, Page County, Frederick County, Fauquier. We need to get representatives from those areas, and we'll go as far in the state as we can. We're right now, and this is important, a state corporation, nonprofit corporation. We are a 501c3. So
So we can donate money and take a tax
We
deduction.
It's a tax deduction to donate to this cause.
We
Remember
are.
that. That's a tax deduction.
Right.
Everybody's looking for that.
Yeah, so that, we have to do some fundraising, obviously, and, which, that's kind of the hard part.
Sure.
The hard part for us, the easy part is to do the history, so.
Costs money to do that.
Sure.
It does, but it's something that's going towards a good cause. It's greatly necessary, and I think even people that aren't energetic about this mission and this cause, once they hear or see what we're trying to do and the importance and the impact that it'll make on today's society and then the generations below us, they'll be more involved. They'll want to make a difference.
Well, we'll have to shame them into it. In a sense, sometimes you have to do that to realizing how history illiterate that we are, and we need to really bring that up. And you talked about the schools and things. You talk about millennials, but really, this almost needs to start pre-millennial. I mean, you hate to
Yeah.
use that word, but
Yeah.
and started at a very young age now, and to re-educate our children. It used to be taught at home.
Right.
Well, now we have latchkey kids. We got this. They barely don't do their homework. I was reading in the paper the other day that we have some of the schools have a 25% absenteeism in the Warren County schools. In that section, that's a lot of students that's not coming to school, and that sets up a problem as it goes along. And I know American history might not correct that, but it builds the culture. You lose those founding principles of what our culture and what our society is built on.
We would like to investigate being an extracurricular activity in the high school.
Clubs,
One of the
activity.
professors that approached us had told us that with the standardized learning in Virginia now, when I went to school here in Virginia, we took field trips to Monticello,
Right,
Mount Vernon. We did all of that. And she told us that they no longer take those field trips or do those kind of things because with the standardized learning tests, they only have one question pertaining to a battle or a president, so they can't justify spending a whole day or an amount of money to go learn about it. So they only teach whatever that one question on the
They
SOL.
teach the test. That's what it's all about.
So
about
our
the
goal
SOL.
is to address the great, the not so great, and the regrettable parts of our history.
Right. Well, there's a lot of it, and we're right in the heart of it. You've selected the best location to really go back into our American history because we're living in the backyard
Absolutely.
of our history and of our country. And it's just going to be fabulous, I think, and fantastic what you're doing. I'd like to see, like you say, get things into younger ages and build your base so when they graduate from high school and they get into college and they become that voting age, they'll have a better understanding on really what, when they put that check or fill in that little box,
What
that
they're
they know
voting
what
for.
they're voting for, and then to how to hold those people they vote for
Hold them
accountable,
Absolutely.
and how to do that. I mean, and that's obviously a situation that we're dealing in our own problem now, is how to hold these people accountable and the trust you put in these people. So obviously somebody down the road missed that step.
The Center for American Progress reported in February that public trust in the government is only 18% and voter participation has reached its lowest since 1996.
Yeah, it's a shame. It's really
But
a
they
shame.
don't realize that we're the ones who elect them. They answer to us. So
Right. Well, they talk about, oh, we need term limits. We have term. The founding fathers set term limits. It's the ballot box.
That's right.
And I wonder, like, who votes for some of these people over and over? And it's been 30 years. They're still in office, and they don't vote the way I vote, but still,
Right.
obviously, they're representing their constituents, and maybe that's good. But when you look at it, you're thinking like, we don't need term limits. We need people to be actively involved
Right.
in being responsible to their government and making sure their government is doing what they want them to do. Be responsible.
absolutely.
So there's a lot involved. We have electoral college problems. We got history. You got to pick one, I guess, and start somewhere, because it's an A to Z problem.
Well, in presenting the day-to-day 1787 operations of the Constitution, you go across all of these subjects.
It'll
Right.
be a diary, if you
Right.
will, that we'll present on social media every day from that day in May through September.
17 made us.
Well, maybe that's something that the Royal Examiner can help you
Yeah.
publicize
Right.
and share
Yeah.
to
We'd
our
love that.
45,000 viewers each month. So something's great. People do like a lot of things. It's amazing the articles that people do read. It's not always about crime. The old story, it bleeds, it leads. Yeah, that does get some activity, but people really want to know what's going on.
They're interested, but they're not engaged.
Exactly.
And so that's what,
And supportive. You talk about financial support that you're getting. People need to, if they, the old saying, you got to put your mouth or put your wallet
Money
where your mouth
is.
is. Your money where your mouth is. And people will, and I blame it on that anonymity of the keyboard. They hide behind social media, and you read the comments. You know what's, and they'll say things that they would never say to your face.
Right.
And but their name's right there, but they don't see that that's tied to them. I don't
Right.
know. And that's the problem. They're engaged in that part of the conversation, but they
to
never
actually go out and make a
to
difference.
go vote, to study, to put their money where their mouth is. It seems to be lacking right now, and I think that people don't realize how important I think this subject is, because obviously it's not something that you're going to change tomorrow. It's a long-term process, but it's
If we
Yeah.
don't start now, I can only imagine where my kids' generation
exactly,
will be.
exactly, and it's because we're losing that. We went through, obviously when we were growing up, it was a much bigger part of our education process. We had to have this to graduate from high school.
There was so much pride in it.
Exactly.
We prided ourselves
We
in
built
that.
statues and memorials and all sorts of things in our history.
Right.
My generation's tearing them down.
And they're tearing them down. And so, because I think they don't understand.
Right.
Well, that was a Civil War. That was an important part
Look
of
at
history.
the growth that we've had since the
Right.
Civil War. It's a
not-
reminder.
It's a reminder of not to repeat our history. And they're looking at it as a negative, and really it's a
Right.
positive.
Absolutely.
Well,
So-
we need to make back to our founders, human beings,
Exactly.
and not images. And this is what
Not cartoon characters.
Well, yeah, as the
Right,
president
right.
and founder, I'm ignorant to parts of history as well. I'm continuously educating myself, surrounding myself with locals who can educate me.
Right.
So, I'm by no means a professional or a historian. I'm ready to make a difference. And I think that when people realize that we can collectively make a difference by just showing up and being involved, we have to start somewhere.
Well, I'm hoping that we can get the word out, and that possibly somebody watching this will reach out to you, and that our history people that want to have a similar desire to help get this out, and they can reach out to you. When we post it, we'll publish the website. It's Heritage-ICYMI.org. But we'll publicize that. People can reach you on your website. They can email you. You have your phone numbers all listed. You're looking for people to, obviously for financial support, which is tax deductible, but at the same time, you need boots on the ground,
Absolutely.
and you're looking for that people that can help you, I'm
And
sure.
we're hoping the website is up in 2 weeks.
Good, good. Well, we'll keep everyone posted, and as you start posting these things, be sure you share them with the Royal Examiner, because,
Absolutely.
we do reach a good audience here in Warren County, so I'll put a plug in. Last month, over 45,000 unique users came to our site,
Wow.
and that's more than the population of the county. So every man, woman, and child is about 35,000,
Right.
so we are reaching, I think
That's
we are
great,
reaching the
yeah.
people, and they're concerned, and they come because there's articles that people want to know. They want to know more than just that 30-second sound bite. If this interview was on TV, you would have had they would have talked to you for an hour, and then when you watched it, there would be 30 seconds
Right.
that they
Right.
talk about. So we
Right.
hope we don't do that. And we want to publish it from start to finish,
Right.
and let people make their own decision. And I think you're the same way. We're going to give you the information about our history, and we want you to do it, but take it or leave it
Right.
and move on to the next one. I think
Right.
you can't twist their arm. I always say, but you can. They say you can't make a horse drink, whatever it is. But I said you can always put salt in its oats. You can give some incentive.
That's a good
and,
one.
I use that a lot. And also, I remember people say, "Oh, you can't do it by yourself." I said, "No one does this stuff by themselves." I said, "Even the Lone Ranger had Tonto." So, don't think you're out there in the world by yourself. There's other people, Bill and Amber here, that are looking in our community for some people to help them get this message out. We really appreciate you coming into the studio today, and we'll keep in touch.
Thank
All right?
you for having
Thanks,
us.
Mike.
Sure. Thanks, Bill. Thanks,
Thanks.
Amber.
Thank you.